When Sue found a job in New York, the question of housing arose. She wandered through websites and found a suitable apartment. She didn't think much about it. She chose the one closest to her new job. It did not matter that the house was a shabby two-story house and all the furniture was old. She had lived in worse conditions. Anyway, she moved in quickly. She took the keys from a burly man who introduced himself as the nephew of the landlady. Girlfriends warned her that the documents should be checked carefully. But Sue had walked around the apartment, and despite all its squalor, she knew this was where she wanted to live. The apartment made the impression of an antique museum. Fancy furniture, black and white photographs on the walls. Just portraits of a woman with a stern look and thin, pursed lips. "She looks about 40 years old. Is this your aunt?" Sue inquired of the big-faced man. "Yes," the nephew nervously rubbed his nose. "She's at the seaside. That's why she can't take the money herself. I am for her." Sue had heard that before. She accepted the keys, paid, and began to settle in. At first everything was fine. Sue was working late. She was exhausted when she came home. Eat, sleep, and go back to work. That's how her week would go until the weekend. And sometimes even her weekends were eaten up by work. But at night Sue began to notice strange creaks and rustles in the apartment. It was understandable. The house was old and dilapidated. But these sounds were very similar to footsteps. Several times I got up from Sue's bed, turned on the light everywhere, but found nothing unusual in the apartment. There was more. Out of the blue, things started disappearing from her place. And not just go missing. She'd put the keys to the apartment in the hallway before going to work. Distracted, and the keys are no longer in that place. She'd spend 10 minutes looking for them. And they'd be in the bathroom or the kitchen. Sue had blamed her absent-mindedness at first, but then she deliberately experimented. It was true, the keys had disappeared on their own and turned up in another room. It even amused her, but a month later, at night, it was no laughing matter. Sue awoke to footsteps. Now there was no doubt that someone was walking in the next room, and in high heels. "Who's there?" she asked, staring into the darkness through the doorway. Her footsteps ceased at once. Sue rose from her bed and tiptoed into the adjoining room. Her mouth was dry, her hands trembled, she shook with nervous tension. She put her hand into the room and fumbled for the light switch. She felt as if an icy hand had touched her skin. "Sue," she heard a whisper behind her. With a shriek, Sue turned on the light and turned around. No one. It was deep night outside the window. Quietly whirring old lamp under the lampshade. From the wall right in front of Sue suddenly fell down a picture of a stern woman. The frame rattled on the floor. The sound was muffled. As it turned out, her ears were stuffed. Then all the closet doors swung open at once, and clothes and things flew into her. Sue stood at a loss under the hail of laundry. Woke up when a shoe rather painfully crashed into her head. She rushed out of the room, but then the unbelievable happened. The air in front of her thickened, taking the form of a female figure. Long hair, a face a transparent, shapeless blur against the bright electric light. Sue felt icy hands grasp her wrists and drag her toward the window. She screamed and struggled, but the strength of the ghost, and she realized it was the ghost of the woman in the photograph, was very similar to the outline of the figure. The ghost's power was stronger than hers. She was thrown out of the window like a feather, right through the wooden frame. It's a good thing she hit the soft branches of the trees, otherwise she would have been in trouble. And the shards from the glass did not scratch her too badly. Already in the hospital, her nephew came to her and asked her not to tell the police about the accident. He promised to pay the money back. Sue knew they wouldn't believe she'd been attacked by a ghost. Even huge bruises on her wrists in the form of thin woman's fingers would not be clear proof of the presence of the otherworldly. By the way, her nephew admitted to her that the woman in the picture was really his aunt. But she did not go away to rest. but took her to an insane asylum. Because the aunt considered herself a hereditary witch and supposedly assured everybody that she communicated with the dark forces. Then it was as if the devil had got into her. She started throwing herself at people. And on the day of Sue's accident, his aunt died in the hospital. Sue never went back to that apartment. Her nephew moved all her things to a new house. And that two-story house soon burned down by itself. No one understood what the cause of the fire was.
Thank you for watching and supporting me. Subscribe to the channel, there will be many more interesting things.